to stay on the line while we get folks going. We'll begin shortly. Again, good evening. Thank you for joining. We're going to get started. Welcome to East Orange's 12th telephone town hall meeting. As we've been facing this COVID pandemic, our country is facing another pandemic, and we want to be able to talk about both of those things and how East Orange reacts and how East Orange overcomes and how East Orange conquers. We are joined, of course, with a wonderful panel, and we begin shortly with our Mayor Ted Green.
Yes, thank you so much, Rachel. Let me just thank everybody for joining us this evening on our weekly meeting. And as Rachel stated earlier, we have been engaged for the last between 11 and 12 weeks with this pandemic. And just recently, we have been affected by what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd. So tonight, we're going to bounce from the COVID very quickly. We're going to get some numbers out. Then we're going to introduce our panelists here. We got a great panel. We got Vinnie Brown of Naughty by Nature. We got Reverend Dana Owens, pastor of Messiah Baptist Church. We have our councilwoman from the Second Ward, Brittany Claybrooks, and we also have our Chief Phyllis Bendy with us this evening, and we have our very own Dr. Monique Griffin, and also we have two outstanding young folks who are with us tonight. Our Student Council President, Sage McFadden Davis from STEM Academy, and we also have a senior with us, Anisha John Pierre. So we are very happy to have this panel tonight. So what I want to do very quickly, I know people are anxious to really start talking about what took place a few weeks ago with George Floyd, and we're excited. We got some great information, and we got some great things that we need to talk about. So very quickly, we're going to ask Dr. Monique Griffin to give out the numbers, because we just want to make sure everybody know where we at with our COVID numbers. So Dr. Griffin, can you please just give out the numbers very quick, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, East Orange. I know that there's so many things to talk about, but as the mayor mentioned, it's so important for us to still keep in mind that we are still in the middle of a pandemic. Restrictions have not been fully raised. Here within the city, as of Thursday, June 4th, we have 2,014 positive cases of COVID. We also have 201 confirmed deaths. The ward breakdown that we usually provide is as follows. In the first ward, we have 274 cases. In the second ward, we have 334 cases. In the third ward, we have 413 cases. And in the fourth ward, we have 422 cases. And in the fifth ward, we have 406 cases. And so within Essex County, there were 17,908 cases and 1,693 deaths. And within New Jersey as a whole, there are 162,068 positive cases and 11,880 deaths. So it's so important. There's been so much discipline that we've seen our residents have throughout the past 12 weeks in maintaining the guidelines that have been put forth, whether it's social distancing, wearing masks, wearing gloves. And it's so important that while everything is still going on, while you are still outside, that you remain vigilant and you also remain mindful, because what we don't want is for there to be a premature spike in the number of our cases. So do what you have to do, but also still remember to continue to protect yourselves. And for those who are still curious about testing, we are still offering testing, free testing testing and with proof of insurance at our old VLD site, which is located at 161 Elmwood Avenue, on Thursdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and on Fridays as a walkthrough from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. We are still going into our senior buildings, and that's important. So even for the seniors that have people telling them and stressing the fact that testing is optional. Yes, it is optional, but it's still important for you to still take care of yourselves and know where you stand. So please take advantage of the opportunity for you to be tested while you're in your own building.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffiths, for that update on those numbers. So as you heard, we are here tonight because we're fighting two pandemics, right? We fighting COVID-19, and we also fighting what we call social justice. So tonight, our topic is peace, but not patience. And it's a discussion on social justice, civil rights, and empowerment. Now, we all know due to the tragedy murder of George Floyd on Memorial Day and the protests that have been held around the world, we decided we needed to shift gears and focus on the other public health crises that we have been experiencing for centuries. We've been experiencing for centuries. And as I said earlier, racism, injustice against black and brown people. So with that, glad to see my good friend Vinnie Brown, who just joined us from Naughty by Nature. So we are very honored to have our panel here tonight. So with that, I'm going to just ask the panel just very quickly, just introduce yourself very quickly, and then I want to go into our discussion with my panel. So we're going to start with our Chief Bendy. Very quickly introduce yourself, and we're going to get right into our talk conversation.
Okay. Good evening, everyone on Facebook Live. Welcome again. I am Chief Phyllis Bindi of the East Orange Police Department. I'd like to just say a few words, Mayor, if you don't mind. Okay. I want to speak to the tragic death of George Floyd. As part of the Essex County Chiefs Association, Chief Kroll from South Orange have put up some meaningful words to the association. On Monday, we gathered in Newark with Mayor Ross Brock, Director Ambrose, and every agency throughout Essex County. What we did there, I was extremely proud to be amongst Essex County Chiefs of Police and Directors as we came together Monday to denounce our association with the 4 cowardice Minneapolis cops involved in the arrest of George Floyd's death. With that being said, to our East Orange community, far too often law enforcement personnel remain silent when we should be leaders in holding others in our own profession and ranks accountable. Our lack or perceived lack of moral courage to speak can easily lead the public to believe we are complacent. As Chief of the East Orange Police Department, I want you to know that, like you, I watched the video footage of George Floyd being murdered at the hands of law enforcement. It was appalling, unnecessary, inhumane, tragic, and unacceptable. All 4 officers involved must be held accountable for both their actions and inactions. Notably, not one officer intervened to protect George Floyd, a complete dereliction of their duties. I commit to you that in our strong, diverse community, we are listening and working every day to do better and involve those we serve in helping us become stronger, both as a police department and as a community. We will continue to ensure that our department racially reflects the community and visitors we serve. We will increase our committed transparency and community relations. We were the first department in Essex County to issue body-worn cameras to our officers to increase transparency. We will implement biannual use of force and internal affairs training, implemented implicit bias and differential treatment training on an annual basis. We will continue to strengthen our diversion programs within our community relations unit while working closely with both our middle school and high schoolers. We are a part of and adhere to the Attorney General's Excellence in Policing initiative that deals with professionalism, transparency, and accountability. All departments in Essex County throughout the state are bound by it. It is posted on the New Jersey Attorney General's website if you would like to look at it. As always, we are committed to transparency and public notifications when officers do not hold themselves to the highest standards our community demands and rightfully deserves. Trust needs to be earned and not expected just because we wear a badge. What we all witnessed in Minneapolis was tragic beyond words and truly demoralizing to the righteous, hard-working men and women of our profession. I promise you that we will continue to be forthcoming and we will work diligently to remove this stain from our profession in order to restore your faith. The residents of this community should rest assured that we will never tolerate the types of police practices that resulted in George Floyd's death. God bless him, and may the Lord give him strength for his family right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. So we're going to go right into our conversation. Vinnie Brown, so you have been very active here in the city of East Orange, man, in recent years on different levels. Tell us why you think that it's important for people to stay committed to their communities and reinvest their talent, time, and treasure to make it better here in the city of East Orange.
Yes, well, first and foremost, my name is Vinnie Brown from rap group Naughty by Nature. I'm born and raised right here in East Orange. My birth certificate says East Orange General Hospital, right. So I always, make sure I mention that. But the reason why I'm so hands-on with my city, the city I was born in, is because when we first pursued our music career, it all happened right here. We went to public school from Stockton to the middle school, Hart Middle Complex, all the way to the former East Orange High School. So it was our community, it was our peers, it was just the whole town support that encouraged us to go out and conquer the world. So for one, like this year, we're celebrating our third album, which we won a Grammy Award for, called Poverty's Paradise. So that was our third album. Our first album was That Ultimate Struggle. Second album, we got over the sophomore jinx. And the third album, we were exposed to the world. We saw what other cities were doing, other towns were doing. We would travel the world, go to other countries, right, see what they were doing. And we formed this theme called Poverty's Paradise, which was the title of our third album. And it was all about taking your poverty and turning it into your paradise. So we figured that since this is the town who always supported us, when we come up, when we start making money, it's only right to come back and embrace our city, yes, from the school district to working with local government and law enforcement to bringing our resources and our financial resources to just help maintain the city and show the world, what East Orange is all about.
And I thank you very much for that. And I definitely want to come back to you because I know that we quite often talked about the importance of folks investing in the community and stop leaving the community to stay in the community. So just hold that thought. So I'm gonna go right over to our second ward councilwoman, Brittany Claybrook, because we know that you are the youngest member on the East Orange City Council, a millennium at that, who has spent a great deal of time battling systematic racism and other injustice in places like Detroit, Michigan, where she's from, Washington, D.C., and well as New York. What can you tell young people who are feeling so much rage today, especially right now, how to mobilize, how to push forward and have an agenda that unites rather than divides?
So, Mayor, it's interesting that you say that because ultimately, even as I sit here and try to be productive, I can't act as though I'm not mad.
Right, there you go.
Right, so I actually started this as a dream defender. Right. When Trayvon Martin was killed in Florida, I was an undergrad student at Florida A&M University. And when that happened, a lot of us wanted to spring into action. So we staged a 30-day sit-in in the Capitol, where we stayed in the Capitol for 31 whole days sleeping in it.
Right.
And it wasn't an easy thing to do at that time because, as a young person, it's real scary to be landing in the Capitol where, there are guards walking over you with their big guns, you're so young, you're marching, and you're doing all this stuff, but everything that's driving it is the anger that we felt. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And we marched to Washington and we did all these things, but we had one goal. And that was to get rid of, at the time, the stand your ground law. Okay. That was in play, that allowed people to be shot just because. And we ultimately know that we live in a system where they say all lives matter, but we know this system values other lives.
I agree with that.
Right? particularly white lives, over those that are black. And so in places like Florida at that time, people were getting killed all over the place, particularly black folks, without justice.
Right.
And we were upset about that.
Yeah, it was just us.
And I think Trayvon Martin and stuff like Mike Brown and those kind of movements brought that out.
Right.
Right? And that's when I kind of came into this space. And I think the largest point that I want to make is that even in anger, what we know about like just human beings in general, emotions have phases. And the first thing you feel is that natural rage to want to get out and do something.
That's right.
And for me, even though I've later on bought into and dedicated my life to a long-term fight for systematic change, right? Whether it's working in government or every week when we sit on our committees on the council, approving RFPs and trying to make our community better, right? That's how I've chosen to deal with my anger long term. But I also understand where folks are looking at it, particularly folks in my age group who were in college at that time, and saying, we fought and we put our bodies on the line for this.
Right.
And then here we are, 28, 29, 30, and we still seeing this kind of stuff.
Every day. It's
You know, and I think that anger is justifiable and it's understood. But as a person who has chosen to dedicate my life to it long term, I've come out on the other side saying that this is a long game.
Okay.
Right? It's a fight that we're going to have to continue.
Yes.
And I appreciate, ultimately, even as a person that sits on this side of the fence, and I've chosen my side of the battle to fight, I appreciate the protesting and the anger, right? And even as our president made his comments last night, we found out that even with a little bit of violence and a little bit of looting that's happening, which is the minority part of the movement, we don't want to take away what that movement is actually doing.
There you go.
Right?
Right.
So I'm just here to have a real conversation.
Listen,
about
I'm excited about already the way we're starting off.
Of course.
So, and hold that thought, because I'm coming back
course.
to everybody, right? So what I want to do also is make sure that you know, as a young millennium, and we have two young people that you're going to be hearing from in a few minutes. Let me go to Reverend Dana P. Owens, who joined us yesterday at our prayer that we had yesterday over at Campus High School. Reverend Owens, how you doing?
Good, Mayor. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. You know, and thank you for joining us, man. Really appreciate you, man. And if you don't know, Reverend Owens represents the Messiah Baptist Church. And Reverend, I have a question, right? The church has always played such a vital role in moving civic rights forward. Yesterday, you quoted the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When you said that we should be judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. So, as a church leader, and that's what you are, what role can the church or any other spiritual institution play in fighting for justice?
Okay. I think one of the key roles that we can play as pastors and members of our churches is to inform our community of the issues. One of the things that I've been talking about recently, I've been studying the works of Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who is both pastor of Abyssinian in Harlem, but also the congressman representing Harlem. And one of the things that I've discovered is that the church has to be the place where the news is disseminated, where the information that affects our community is not only shared, but we come together in a collective voice to let our voices be heard, be known to those who are in power. Okay. And I think troublesome thing for me, Mayor, is that in this day and age, our churches have lost a sense of community. In the 60s, many of those members lived in that neighborhood. The teachers were there, the principals, the doctors, the lawyers, everyone was a part of the community and a part of the church.
Yes.
But because of the advancements that we've had thus far, we are scattered abroad. And so for me, it's imperative, especially in this day and age, for the church to be that place where the news of the community is spoken about and we rally around the issues that affect us. I don't necessarily get all of my news from CNN or MSNBC or the like. I believe that the church still remains the place where the news has to be shared that affects the people in our community.
And I agree with you 100%. I know that when I was young, the churches was basically, our homes. You was able to go after school and go into one of the churches, or there was recreation in some of the churches that you can go to. I mean, you did a lot. The churches became really our recreational institutes in our communities, and you don't see much of that anymore. But Pastor, I want you to hold on to what you just said, because we're gonna bounce around that conversation, because when we talk about our spiritual leaders, the trumpet has to be sound, that a role that they have to play. Many of them playing a role, but it has to be even a stronger role, because it is well needed. Because you looked at when we grew up also in the 60s and the 50s, the churches was the basis for movement.
It was the place.
Period. So and I'm glad you said about the movement, because we have two dynamic young ladies on our panel tonight, and these two individuals are very active in the community, but we know that they gotta be on a voting path, right? So I'm gonna ask Anissa first, and then I'm gonna go to Sage. So the question to both of our young people is this, right? What can you do to encourage your peers to participate in a process of reform and change? I'm gonna say that again. As young people, millennials, right? What can you do to inform your peers to participate in process of or reform and change? So we'll start with Anissa, then Sage, you come right on in.
Her mic is muted.
Anissa, your mic.
She has to unmute her mic.
Unmute your mic. So while she's unmuting her mic, Sage.
Yeah,
Yes,
she is.
we can hear you now.
All right. I think that it's important that for me that I make sure that my peers know their rights. I think that it's important that I tell my peers about the risks. Because you don't know who you are, you don't know where you've been in the past, you don't know where you're going to go. You don't know
I like that.
why it's so important that you have to make sure that people have to know when it's young people that you have to get registered. I found out that I can be registered at 17
Yes.
years old. A lot of my peers my age don't know that. So now we're leading the greatest age. Let's just say you turn 18, and let's just say you turn 18 maybe a couple days before the election. Like you go vote. That means you can't vote. But you could have registered for 17.
Okay.
So I think that that's very important.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So Sage, tell me how the same question I asked her in terms of what can you do to encourage your peers to participate in the process of reform and change?
Well, first of all, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mayor Green. So, and it's so funny because as I was preparing for this meeting, I was trying to identify a topic that I really wanted to stay on tablet, and reformation was the biggest one. Because I can sit here and I can tell you everything that I know about the civil rights movement and everything about social injustice over the past few years. But the most important thing is, what are we going to do in preparation for tomorrow? And so what I've been having so many conversations with my friends about it as of recently, you have to make sure that your voice is heard. And education and knowledge is so vital during times like this. You have to understand what your rights are. You have to vote. You have to make sure. And it's not only the big presidential election. They have to think about, they have this incredible mayor in office, but you have to see who is your governor, who is your senators, who are these people that are coming into office that you have control over. The power lies in our hands, honestly. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I have one of my best friends so angry with the police system right now.
And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, I also have a problem with these people that were meant to protect us. Why are they our biggest enemies now? And I feel like a lot of people are just kind of wrapped in this idea that, you know, it's just forget the police are horrible and everything. And it just seems to be a trend with so many different people. And it's, well, you have to know that, and unfortunately, we're going off on the podium now, but
That's okay.
you have to know the right. I can't stress it enough. You have to know the rights. You have to know that, you know, during your stop and frisk moments, like, how are you supposed to react? They have to know, unfortunately, watch your mouth. You don't want to be in any of these situations. They have to be watching these videos, and they have to be seeing what exactly is happening to these other people, so it won't also happen to them. And then they have to know their laws, and they have to continually research everything that's going on right now, staying on top of these topics, because it could be you, it could be your brother, it could be my brother, it could be anybody tomorrow. And to avoid that, it's just knowledge, concrete knowledge, knowing everything regarding absolutely everything. I probably just sound like I'm not saying anything right now, but just whatever it is that you have to know in that process. When, I definitely feel scared, because what you don't want to do is get arrested and not know your rights.
Right.
You don't want to be in court and not know absolutely anything. And you can't depend on the law system sometimes. You know, our attorneys may not always have our back.
Yes.
Our education system might not necessarily teach us everything, but having that knowledge base is the absolute best power that you have. And that's what I've been telling my friends. Make sure you're researching. Make sure you're knowing who's coming into office. Make sure you're knowing what you want in office. Make sure you're researching what the Republican Party is, what the Democratic Party is, and all these good things. Research and knowledge is the most important thing.
Yes, and thank you for that. And you know, I think that's very important. I think what both of you said, both points were so important. But I want to come back. I want to kind of bounce over to our chief very quickly, because you know, being the chief of the police department, right? And not only that, you have been. You know, you're part of this community, your family is part of this community. You basically was raised in the city of East Orange, Chief. And I know that during this time of what happened with George Floyd, I'm not quite sure, have there been any feedback from any of the police officers, but give us your overview on, and I know earlier you gave some scenarios in terms of what our police department is about and what we always will be about. But what do you feel as the chief that we can continue to improve the community relationships and interactions with the community to make it better?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, like I said, and ladies, very powerful the messages you both had. Our diversity is our greatest strength, both as a community and as a nation. We must continually strive to ensure that all people, no matter their race, creed, color, or sexual identity, are treated equally. And with understanding and respect. We are committed to teaching our officers and living those values. And advancing the cause of social justice, both in our community and the world beyond. That is the message we are trying to get out. Of course, you know, as I said, with the police chiefs I got together, as a community we get together, as a department we get together, we denounce this heinous murder of George Floyd. In my 29 years in policing, I have to say, I agree with you, Councilwoman, there have been some heinous crimes.
Yes, they have.
This is absolutely, to me, the top. And I've watched them all from a million angles. There is no officer I spoke to. I go on lots of chiefs associations, the International Chiefs Association, Chiefs of Police. We're on emails together. We're on threads together. Yes. We all share. Yeah. We all echo the same feelings. Yeah. We are all hurting right now. We want to do what is right and correct. It's the entire world. Yeah. And it's going to take all of us. Right.
So, and with that, Vin, are there any currently organized efforts that the hip hop world, the music world, or entertainment, or the industry that you're in, are there any current like events that y'all gonna kind of start? Are there any of the other artists come together with you and saying, hey, let's get out here and let's change some policy, let's get out here and do a very productive march? Is there anything out there in terms of the entertainment world?
Yes, I think for one, the hip hop community is maturing to the point where, you know, it's transferring into a lot of activism. So from what Killer Mike and T.I. are doing in Atlanta, to even right here with Do It All from Lords of the Underground running for, you know, councilman at large down in North with his 211 impact. You know, to what we do here, boots on the ground. I mean, hip hop is mobilizing now, and I think that in that maturity, we're starting to realize that the jewelry guy, the Bentley guy, and the Ferrari guy doesn't mean anything, because when things like this occur, they're nowhere to be found. You know, those guys who get a lot of lease money from these rappers, they're nowhere to be found. So we're finding it better to organize, to take those funds, reinvest in our communities. And I would like to say to the young people there, you know, lately there's been this thing about going to college and, oh, it's bad debt. But what we need most importantly now from our young people is to go to school. Just make sure you're studying the right thing. We need more lawyers. We need more politicians. You have to totally infiltrate this system, so you don't have to worry about a prosecutor not doing his job. You know, I know, Chief, there's a big, you know, talking point right now about this qualified immunity.
Right.
You know, so really what that says to our young people, or what it says as a police culture in this nation, that no matter what you do to a citizen, you basically have immunity and no repercussions. So no matter how aggressive a cop gets with you, he's not going to be held liable. So there's conversation to reverse that and to kind of ease up on that. And when you have a culture that doesn't reward recklessness, then you'll start to see some of these things clean up. But as the young people said up there, it's very important to know your laws, to know local civics. You know, I think that's one thing that our young people are lacking. Civics, what it takes to, you know, run a city. What you guys do running a city is very important. It's a tough job. So the more intimate you are with that job, the more you participate in it, the more you participate in and infiltrate it and hold these offices, then that's when real change comes.
And I like that. I'm gonna kind of flip over very quick, but we are going to take some calls also. I think it's important to take some calls, and I've been getting some texts, so we definitely is. But I want to kind of shift over to Councilwoman Brittany Claybrook, right? And you are the youngest councilwoman on council, right? Right. And a lot of times when we talk about laws, the only way laws get in effect is policy, right? So as a councilwoman, and you talked about it earlier because you saw it in your lifetime, what do you think on a local level that the council needs to do to set policies around in terms of cop brutality?
It's interesting, Mayor, that you asked that. First of all, we have great leadership on our council. I just want to give a shout out real quick to our council chairman, James, who has been discussing with us some of the things that we can do legislatively, like, you know, a full-out citizen review board.
Right, we talked today about that,
And I think the other part of that is, what we don't often talk about is how place matters in these type of issues, right? I'm an urban planner by trade, and one of the things that East Orange, what makes East Orange so special is that we live in a place that feels like home, right? Our leaders look like us. And I think that helps when creating policies, particularly around what East Orange is going to become.
Without a doubt.
Right? So we want to make sure that we're continuing to keep the quota that we have where our police officers are from here, or they're predominantly minority. And I think when it comes to setting forth policy, with the criminal justice system, ultimately, I think for the most part, in East Orange particularly, we try to do things the best we can.
Right.
And
right.
so the best thing we can do legislatively is continue to support some of the structures that we already have in place. So
Right.
we can make addition to that, like the review board.
Right.
But then ultimately, as people come into East Orange, as people move to East Orange, we also have to send a clear message to those folks about who we are and who we'll continue to be as we build out our legislation. And I think that's also important too.
Thank you so much for that. So what I want to do just very quickly, Rachel, I know there's some folks sitting on the phone. Let me just take a few calls right quick because they're blowing my phone up and very quickly. So Rachel, let's get, I'm gonna go right back to.
You can keep going. We actually didn't tell folks to press, 0, so you're fine. We have a listenership of over, 900 folks, so you can keep going.
Okay, thank you.
So if you just want to take a call or ask a question, they can press 0, and I'll let you know when they come in.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, right, just want everybody just like in less than 60 seconds, right, I'm gonna go to Reverend Dana Owens, right? And I just want you to give me your feel of what just happened in terms of Floyd, right? And what you're feeling about the whole situation. I can tell you very quickly my feeling, these type of events is not just happening in Minnesota, they're not just happening in New York. Some of these things are happening right around us. And I can just say from my experience, my grandson just recently went through a altercation with police officers who stopped him at 12 o'clock at night, African-American kid, 19 years old, because he got tinted windows. And I struggle with that a lot of times when we get stopped for tinted windows and other folks drive around every day with tinted windows. I have to be frank about it. Stopped him, searched his car, didn't find no paraphernalia in his car. Told him to get out the car. Asked him to take his wallet out, whatever. Did all that. Told him where he lived at. Blah 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 blah. And they still slammed my grandson on the ground. Still charged my grandson. Tried to say that he was resisting arrest. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It's wrong every day, right? And then folks think, for instance, when these things happen, that you can just get away with it. You can't. Because they always say, what you do in the dark will come out in the light. And we is fighting it. And it's a local city right near our city where it took place at. And my point that I'm making is that here's a 19-year-old kid, you put a charge on him who don't have a record. Don't even have a record. Right? So you put a charge on him saying he resisted arrest. Now he's 19. If you don't fight it, 19, 20, whatever, then they got to try to fight it because then he has a record. It's no good. Period. So I had to get that out because I'm still upset about it because when we saw what just happened with this with Floyd, it happens every day. Right. It's not just happening on Memorial Day. Certain people just don't get caught. And to be honest, like I always say, we got some great cops, but we got some terrible cops too. So with that, I just want to, I had to get that off my chest because I think that there has to be reform. I hear folks quite often talk about reform, talk about policy, talk about changing the laws. It has to be done because individuals like what happened to Floyd should never happen to any human being again. But it's still happening. It's still happening. So with that, I just want to get a feel from everybody very quickly. What's your feeling about it? And with that feeling, like I said, you see marches all over. We're very grateful of that. We're starting to see organized marches around the country, right? Without young people tearing up, right? And that's why we came up with peace, but not patience, right? And we have to encourage our young people to continue to fight for what's right, but do not destroy your community. Do not tear up stores and go and burn down cars. That's not the way. They got to get involved in their community. They have to get involved in voting. Number one thing, because you have to stay involved in your community to see who represents you. So with that, I'm gonna start with my young people very quickly. Sage and Anissa, very quickly, tell me how y'all felt after y'all saw that incident with Floyd.
Well, initially I was disappointed. I was extremely disappointed. And I think my ideology was, it's just another name added to the list of people who have been stripped of their life for no reason. But then as I looked deeper into it, and as I'm watching different videos and documentaries and the interviews of the family members, that disappointment turned into utter sadness and anger. And I was so heartbroken because I was ambushed with Ahmaud and Brianna and George and hundreds of other names. And I'm doing all this research, and I'm like, Jesus. This is crazy. And so my only need is for a reformation. I'm seeing so many marches and big organizations standing alongside it, and my heart is so warm at the thought that we might finally be beginning to have our voices being heard right now. And I'm kind of starting to get.
I got you. I know. I mean, it's frustrating.
I'm just really proud.
Right.
Right now.
It's frustrating. I get it. And through frustration, that's why it's so important for all of you young people to organize, right? And as a young lady, both, it's our responsibility as leaders in the community to make sure we have y'all back. Anissa, give me just overview how you're feeling.
You know, there's a notion that comes with black people, and it's the notion that we are dangerous. That when you see us, you should fear us. So when you have to be forceful with us, you have to kill us because there's a probability that we may kill you. And that's how we end up with George Floyd. That's how we end up with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, Tamir Rice, and so much more. Like, it just makes me think, like, how dangerous do you see us? How dangerous can we be? How dangerous are we jogging? Are we sitting in our own homes? Are we just, it's sickening. It really makes me sick to my stomach. And, you know, and that thought is everywhere with you. It's noted now. It's even in my school. Me and Sage are in a club called Conscious Colors. And the sign for the club was a fist, you know, with a black power, a black pride fist. And there were teachers in my school that said that fist was an act of terrorism. They thought that the fist was terroristic. How can a fist that my hand is a black fist? That's my hand. How is that terrorism? How is that act of terrorism? So thoughts like that is how we end up with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. And as long as people continue to perceive us as dangerous, as long as people continue to perceive us as just dangerous and criminals, and we're going to continue to end up with incidents like this.
Right. So I'm hoping both of you, right, and so many other young people keep that fire, right? Because again, y'all have a voice, and y'all have to take that energy, and it's not a bad anger, it's an anger because you saw something that was not right. It wasn't right then, it won't be right tomorrow, but we have to make it right. So I'm gonna go to Reverend Owens, right? This Reverend Owens, just give me your input on, you saw 4 police officers take their shin, put on a gentleman's neck, another one holding him down. You got one walking around with his hands in his pocket, the one that had his leg on the other one's neck, he had his hands in his pocket. Then you got two others not even, caring. What's your feel about it?
Mayor, one of the things I shared with the members of the side a couple of weeks ago, or last week, when I first witnessed the video, one was the fact that I witnessed a death take place before my very eyes. It wasn't from a movie scene. It wasn't just a clip on the news, but I literally watched a man who was alive take his last breath. And what was astounding to me was the fact that, one, I witnessed it. me along with so many others across the world, witnessed a man die. But then two was the callousness of the officer whose knee was on his neck. That for 8 minutes, he did not flinch. I don't even think he blinked. He had no disregard for Floyd's life. And I take it back and I share with my members because in the book of Genesis, we understand the issue between Cain and Abel, and that's when violence began. And so my belief in this day and age is that we don't respect and appreciate life, especially, and I have to say this, especially people of color. And this has been going on for centuries. From the moment that we arrived here on these shores, our lives have never been considered as equal. And so I was grateful, though. I was grateful in the fact that we were able to witness it. So for everything that Colin Kaepernick stood for every situation that we protested for in the past, going back to those who were lynched, to Emmett Till, moving forward to today, we were able to show America and the world what we have to deal with on a daily basis. Now the challenge is, now that we've witnessed it, what are we going to do about it? And I really want to add to it, and I'll be done with this. I think Vinny and Sage are really onto something because we have to not only vote. Voting is just the beginning. And I say this, voting is like telling somebody to pray about it. It's too abstract. We need to know what our issues are, what we're demanding, and to hold those individuals that we've elected to office accountable. I think a lot of times when we go to the ballot, we place our vote, and then we rest. And we expect the individuals to carry on our agenda. No, we have to be the ones to hold their feet to the fire and say, this is what we elected you for, and we want results. But when you look at white America, the evangelicals and the Tea Parties, they have come together to elect their people. And when those persons are elected, they are carrying their agenda to Congress. We are the only segment of people that elect individuals and we don't have a platform. My hope is that out of all of this, we develop a platform and hold those elected officials accountable. Then I believe we'll begin to see real change.
Thank you for that, Reverend Owens. I'm going to say, let the church say amen on that one, right? So very quickly, we got some calls on. We want to hear from these folks very quickly because I'm feeling excited about this conversation, and I want to kind of come back to you also and Vinny in reference to organizing. So very quickly, Rachel, let's get these calls going. Rachel? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is a Facebook question from for Chief Cindy, and it's from G. Bruce. And the question is, does East Orange have a community advisory board that works with the police department? And if not, are there plans to create one?
Hi, yes we are, and thank you for that question. Councilwoman Claybrook had just touched on that. The mayor had agreed with it, so I'm sure in the very, very near future we will be speaking about it.
Yes, and let me just thank Councilman, our chairman for Councilman Chris James, just sent the email today, talked about a community advisory board. We're going to be looking for some strong people, some people that want to work and be a part of something positive. So again, thank you for that question, but we just talked about it today and hoping to put it in play in terms of a resolution.
The next question, I'm going to bring in June Lockett, and she has a question about civic education.
Okay.
June, July.
Hi, this is June Lockett, and my biggest concern is that we're not teaching civics in our schools, so we can't expect our kids to know about it. There's no curriculum set up, and so my concern is we need to begin to construct a curriculum for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and for our high schoolers so that they understand how government works, how voting works, and the importance of civic education.
And thank you so much for calling, and I'm glad you said that, and I agree with you 100%. You know, when I took office in 2018, the first thing I did through my administration, we reached out to the local schools, and what we did is we're meeting and continue to meet with what we call the student body, and what we want to do is bring from grade school, junior high school into City Hall to not only have a conversation with our young people, but also let them know that they have to be a part of government. And we still, you know, to this COVID hit, we were still doing it in terms of engagement. And many of the council members also engage with our young people, be honest with you. So on the side of the government side, we're doing everything I can. But if you have any young person specific that you are talking about, we are willing to bring them into the fold of what we're doing, what we call, what we call like eating lunch with the mayor, coming to City Hall, learning about government. We would love to be a part of that.
Can I ask a question for the person? Well, can I ask you guys a question?
Yes, go ahead, very quickly.
So, as for us learning about civics and whatnot, I do know that, for example, like next year I have to be elected for political science. So, as of right now, I know at Tyson and at STEM Academy, there are clubs, like, for example, when we brought up our culture club, and we're doing it in student council, we're doing student ambassadors on a state level. And it was also a part of that. She said something about the curriculum. The Amistad curriculum that's specifically about Black history in all schools throughout the state. Isn't that's a part of it, correct? It's a matter of just making sure the teachers stay on that topic, because I know they stayed on the topic with me before, and I've learned about it a lot. It's the only reason why I know so much about politics as of right now.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna let Councilwoman.
Yeah. I think that. That civic engagement is important. I think the nuance to that, though, is I'm actually a product of a school where the curriculum had Black history as a part of, the required classes to graduate. And so for me, that was so important. But I think ultimately for young folks, I think representation in our public offices are important. Like, it is so important for young folks to see representation on their local zoning boards and planning boards and health boards and councils and mayors and, within the state legislatures and even the federal government. Because what folks have to understand is when we were in school, the other side of protesting wasn't the cool thing. The other side of that organizing wasn't the fun part. It was the ugly part. It was when you had to sit in a meeting that's boring, full of information, when you could be outside hanging out. Right? And I think ultimately what we have to do is dedicate our lives to the process, because it's a process. It was a process for the people that came before us, and it's a process now. And I think what I would encourage young folks to do is to be engaged beyond what's cool, right? To put on like your long game cap and say, you know what is it that I'm going to dedicate myself to after the fact? Is it going to be environmental health? Is it going to be criminal justice? Is it going to be urban planning, which definitely needs representation as we build our cities, right? A lot of our kids at career days don't even know what that is, right? And so I think it's understanding what happens after the fact and understanding that civic engagement is not something that you do when the spotlight is on. You have to stay with the young folks when it's not cool, or when it doesn't feel cool, or when you got to show up and stay past 7 or 8 o'clock, right? Sometimes when the club's closed, you coming out of meetings, right? And so I think that that's important also, and I think that's the nuance we forget in this conversation. So I wanted to add that.
Thank you very much, and I think that's fun. Do you have anything to add to that, Vinny, in terms of civic?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest things that, just destroys us as young people, because civics aren't really stressed in our cities. A lot of kids grow up grades K through 12 and never been to a city hall meeting.
Right.
I mean, city council meeting.
Right.
They don't even understand what city council is. Like you said, youth representation and all of these boards, they're not even aware of it. So I think it's very important to trickle down on civics and let our kids not only learn about that, but banking and financing, you know, the whole gamut of what it takes to run a city. And once you learn how to run a city, once you get your house in order, you set an example for other cities, not only in the country, but all around the world.
Right, I agree with that. Chief Bendy, what you think about when they talk about civic? I know you're a chief and you quite often get a whole lot of people. So
I agree wholeheartedly with, I concur with everyone on this panel. Ladies, I'd like to say I thank you. You are two brilliant young ladies and strong, dominant, convicted ladies. I say stay like that. And I feel like if you didn't know Councilwoman Claybrook, you need to, and your younger group, tap into her. The mayor, I applaud you for having someone with this great youth. I guess we're showing our age now. With this great youth, but you can identify, with her. You may feel like, we're older, we don't understand. We do, so give us a chance, okay? I don't have all the answers right now, but I know working together, I firmly believe we can come up with some solutions to make great progress in addressing these very, very, very important issues. Change starts with dialogue, and that's what we need to do. And I believe, Mayor, when you put this, and thank you, Councilman Chairman James, for suggesting that the Citizen Review Board and Councilwoman. I know together East Orange is, again, my grandparents came here from Italy in 1952, bought their first house for $3,500 on Brookwood Street, if that gives you any reference how old we really are. But it's a great community. I have officers that left here, retired from here. They still talk about the tight-knit, strong community, and proud. You can't say anything wrong to me about East Orange. Believe me, it's going to be a fight right to the ground. So I appreciate your strength. You are dynamic. Again, like I said, two young, strong, convicted ladies. Keep it up. Please keep informing people about voting. It is very, very important. And as for your flag or your representation for what you have, that is you. Represent yourself. Be yourself. And you are correct in that. And I applaud you for that, standing up for that.
Right. And I'm glad the chief said that, because we quite often, and Anissa, I'm so proud of her because she was in City Hall with us as an intern, and she did such a wonderful job doing our summer program, and I'm so proud of her. Then I watched Sade from she was my size at one time, but now she's a little taller, but grow up. And honestly, and when you hear our young people, and there's so many other young people in the city that has the same tenacity, have that same intellect. We just got to make sure that we embrace them when we see them. So again, we're very proud of them. But let me ask this question, right? Yesterday, it was announced that the police officers who knee on George Floyd's neck, right, ultimately resulted in his death, that they got charged. He got charged second-degree murder, while the other 3 officers involved in the case have been charged with third-degree murder, right? So we've been seeing for the last week or two folks geared up about the charges, right? Now, all the charges have been upgraded, right? So I want to bounce around and talk about that. What's your feel about that? I want to start with Reverend Owens first in terms of the charges that has been tagged to the individuals who caused George Floyd's death.
Okay, I think that the charges that were brought against the officers, I'm just speaking, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to what the country is demanding. And so I don't think the prosecutors were willing to do it as swiftly as they did, but they had no choice. But I believe that as the federal government investigates, there will be federal charges, and then you can really see the charges that will be made against them and probably them being found guilty. The issue for me is, for every George Floyd that has died at the hands of our officers, not all of them will be held with their feet to the fire like these 4 officers. And so that's the challenge. And I feel like I just keep repeating myself because we have to become a part of every part of our community. Every part of our municipality we have to be a part of. I'll say this real quick. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. And a couple of years ago, I went home. My mother still lives in the hood. And so I'm home in the hood, and there was a little scuffle outside in front of the house. The police came, 4 cruisers. Out of those 4 cruisers, each officer was white. There were 5 officers at that scene, white officers. And for a moment, I said to myself, there's no way that they can understand this situation living where they live. And this isn't about a black or white issue. This is a community issue. And so for me, if we're going to hold one another accountable, we have to have officers in our community. We have to have judges in our community because we understand one another. When President Trump made his way from the Rose Garden to the church, there were 30 white folk with him, predominantly white men. Now, how in the world can they walk and represent the country when just 2 blocks away, you got a street filled with black, white, Latinos, and everyone else? It's a misrepresentation. And so if we don't have the right people in the judge seat to make sure that the verdicts are given so that we might get our justice, we'll keep having this cycle of not guilty verdicts happen. I believe they'll be found guilty. But the challenge is the others who have committed these crimes, will they be found guilty as well? Probably so, or found not guilty because of the injustices on the board. So we've got to become lawyers, politicians, we've got to become activists, protesters. We all come together as part of this collective pot to make a difference in this world. That's my belief. That's my belief. Yeah.
We're gonna go around because I like that very quickly.
Yes, well, it was encouraging to see the charges upgraded, but what was very discouraging was the initial autopsy. Blatant, clear as day that he was choked out, and then the autopsy comes back as if, oh, he had underlying conditions and there was no signs of asphyxiation or what have you. It's like, how much more can you insult us? You know, so again, it's a knee-jerk reaction. The people reacted and they upgraded the charges. So that's definitely encouraging. But again, I think this qualified immunity issue will help change this thing and other bills that's being passed right now. So once you change the culture, once you hold people more liable, then you'll start to see change. But that's where it happens.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. You know, I watched the Memorial Day, the memorial of George Floyd today, and I kind of like what Al Sharpton said. He said that society done had their foot on our neck so long that everything we do, they got their foot on our neck. You know, we had an African American president. They had the foot on our neck, you know, didn't respect him. So again, it's constantly they want to put the foot on our neck and think that nothing's going to happen, man. So I like how that segue came in today and that conversation was. So Councilwoman Claybrook, I know you want to say something. Go ahead. I'm here. I'm listening.
Well, no, I mean, I pretty much said a lot tonight, but I just want to also talk more about when it comes to representation for young folks. It's important for folks who are walking out the door to make room for us and make space for us, but authentically, and give us that space to show up authentically ourselves, so that when we do it, people see themselves in us, right? So when we show up and we don't necessarily have suits on, or we don't necessarily have the right things to say, I think it's important that as we reach out to our young folks that we make room at that table for them to authentically be there, right? And I think that that's something that sometimes we forget to talk about as well. And then lastly, for me, I think those emotions also are like indescribable, right? Like the human reaction to watching another person die. Oftentimes I find myself at a loss for words about it. And so what I've decided to do is to not try to fix racism in white folks, because that sickness is something deeper than anything I could ever touch. That's a choice. But what I have decided to do is take that same anger and those feelings to help heal the trauma of this in my own community. In a community where people look like me, where I can walk outside and my police officer looks like me. So if I need to have that conversation, it's from one person to the next and we look alike, right? My chiefs, right, they're from here and they look like us, they represent us, right? And so for me, I've decided to take on, I found it much more worth my time to focus on healing the trauma and the effects of white supremacy in my own community, because ultimately that's what it's about. And so that's where I am.
Right, very quickly. Hey, Rachel, do we have any calls?
Yes, we do, actually.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to Linda, I'm sorry, I'm actually going to go to Linda Beth, and she wants to know about how officers feel about dealing with people of color as they're being stopped and pulled over. Linda?
Brenda Beth. Yes, I wanted to, I haven't heard anybody say anything about the officers of color that work along with these other officers, because most people know when someone doesn't like them because of their race or whatever. So how has this murder of Mr. Floyd impacted officers of color that have to work along with people who they know are racist also?
Right, great question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, hi ma'am, that is an excellent question. No one has brought that up here. Again, as the mayor said and the councilwoman said, this community mirrors this police department. So I have not heard a word about that. We do speak at roll calls. We do have open dialogue. We have resiliency officers here in the police department, so that someone can always speak to, and we have an agency called Cop to Cop that we can always call, and that's confidential and private.
And I can show you this, under my administration, I'm not tolerating. There's zero tolerance. We're not going to have anything like that. If it is, we're going to have a conversation. But I can tell you under my administration, we're not having that. You know, we see it every day. But right in the city of East Orange, we're not having that. If I got to meet with my director and my chief and the East Orange City Council, we ain't having that.
Mayor?
Yes,
I would just like to add, again, all of this comes from the culture, you know? People say like, oh, the cops have a blue wall of silence, and it's like, it's a gang, and if someone were to jump out and rat on another officer, they would be considered a snitch, similar to what the gang members have on the street. But I think, you know, once the police begin to change their culture, it has to come from within, because it really is unfair to, if there's 10% of national police officers who are rogue and the other 90% are doing their job. This, you know, in times like this, I really, you know, empathize with law enforcement, because it is a tough job. Personally, I couldn't go out here and risk my life every day pulling someone over. You never know what they're coming with. However, it's the job you chose. So it can be stressful, especially in times like this. It's like you're walking around as a cop and everyone wants to come down on you. But just like white people, I'm sure white people are tired of this same narrative all the time, and that's why you see out in the streets, it's so diverse, because especially the young white kids, they're challenging their parents at home. So now when you get more white people involved, at a certain point it's not our problem. We've been saying the same thing forever. Now it's up to the white people to get involved, white people get engaged, white people change the culture of what's going on. And I think that's the same thing that's going to start to happen in law enforcement, because you're going to talk amongst each other and say, you know what, guys, enough is enough. We know what's on the books, we know what we can get away with, and it's time to start being reasonable about these things. Or else, you know, another thing I see, which is not healthy for communities, you know, across the nation. Now they're talking about defunding police departments, you know? So once you start pulling back Now what do we have? Lawlessness on the streets. You know, there is certain, you know, high crime and certain rates. So we don't want that either. It's just that if we police ourselves, if the police are able to police themselves, if white people are able to police themselves, then we can get to some progress, I feel.
Thank you, thank you. Reverend Owens, what you think about that?
You know what, Mayor, I feel as though the progress we make, I feel as though East Orange is the place that represents the country in the right way. And I'm not just saying it because I live here. I'm saying it because we have the right representation based upon those in our community.
Yes.
I think that we could actually blueprint what we're doing, from mayor to our chief of fire to our chief of police to our council persons to everybody that's a part of this municipality. It could be a blueprint for especially urban cities in our country. I am just proud of the number. I'm proud of the diversity that we have on our police force and our fire. And let me just say this, because in many areas across the country, young people don't want to be officers. They don't want to be firefighters. But what I've learned, and I really didn't learn it until moving here, was that being a firefighter, being a police officer, working for the city is a great way to earn a good income. It provides stability, it provides insurance, and it provides a pension. And you're making a difference in your community. And so I believe that if we could really harness what we're doing and share it with those urban cities who are struggling, we can really make a difference in our country. I honestly believe that.
Yeah, I do believe that also, you know, thank you.
I think we should commend the folks like East Orange, period, because Reverend, I know you're from Dayton, I'm from Detroit, and those two cities are 90, 80, and 90+% black. And you know, just like I know, when you grow up, I didn't even know fire people were black until I moved to Stone.
Right.
Because I live in a community that is for all black, but the person showing up to my house to protect me, quote unquote, or to fight my fire is white. And I know they don't live around me, right? So I think that for those of us who have chosen East Orange as our long-term places, we ultimately understand that. And I think that that's something that we ought to protect, because it is an honor. And it is, I would have never decided to get this closely involved with the city until I felt like I could identify and that it did feel like home. And so I do want to commend you as a person who's, or our system as a person who's chosen this as my long-term home. Because it's important for us to know that.
Thank you.
If I could add really quick. This is why I choose to stay so close to my hometown, because like you mentioned, you know, maybe Detroit, Dayton, even our city of Newark, these are pretty large cities and they're harder to manage. So I feel that we have it so great here in East Orange, only being 4 square miles, 65, 70,000 people, it's so manageable that, you know, you can put all of these elements in place and make a model city and be a model for other cities. So even us coming up, I mean, when we came up in the 90s, previous administrations deemed us as, oh, these guys are gangbangers and they're they're in charge of all the ill that's in the city of East Orange. But, you know, I was never discouraged by that. I just understood both dynamics. And this is a testament to young people. Although you may be deemed a certain way or looked upon a certain way, you have to stay the course. And it's up to you to, you know, convince not only yourself that you're better than, but to show your naysayers that you are better than and you're here for the long ride. So for people who always try to down you or you know, say you're negative, they're going to get tired of that narrative when you just continue to prove them wrong. And that's always been my thing with the city of East Orange. So I love it, and I love where we are right now.
Yeah, and I just too, and I really thank all of you for that, because one thing we strive ourselves around is try to find ways and how do we integrate our young people in the process. And I have to commend our leadership, from our chairman, Leroy Jones, down to the local council, to ourselves, because when you look around and we're going to say the public servants that are in the city of East Orange, this is diverse. One of the looking to my left, one of the youngest councilwomen in the history of East Orange. We have women of all cultures on council, young men on council. We have our first councilman who is a Haitian American, right? We have African. We have a Muslim. We have all this diverse individuals, right? And from East Orange, you know. So that speaks of volumes. And you're starting to see young people, especially with what just happened with the death of George Floyd, right? That they're starting to understand the importance of really engagement because they feel it. And I quite often tell people, right, you can't be out there complaining and saying negative things about the people that's doing something, right? You got to get involved. If you get involved, then you can't be on the other side saying what we're not doing, what we should be doing. No, get involved. That's right. You know, I always, you know, I use Busta Rhymes. Don't talk about it, be about it, right? Exactly. And most people talk about it, but they ain't about it. Right. But with that, I always, quite often, right, with all of this going on, right, and it's not nothing new to us, but it just shows that people are tired because you're looking at London and Paris and so many people throughout the country are protesting. I have to ask this, right, after we have this conversation tonight, and we talked about what's going on with Floyd and what happened to Tamir Rice and so many others who have been affected by police brutality, right? Where do we go from here? Right? We can have this conversation, we can be fired, and I said to the young people earlier, they have to stay fired up, right? And what we want them to do, we want them to be mad. We want them to be upset. We want them to be able to say, I want to do something about it, right? We want them to have peaceful marches, right? When I say peaceful, never ever let anybody come in your community and destroy your community, right? But we want them to stay fired up. We want them to say, I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna do something, right? But the question I have to ask, where do we go from here? And I'm gonna bounce that around to everybody. We can start with Chief Bendy, and then we can bounce around, but where do we go from here after knowing that the charges now, these individuals have been charged. We know that racism has been here for centuries. Things are probably happening today with people that never get any publicity. So where do we go from here with this conversation?
I want to say thank you, Mayor. The voice is very loud and it's heard. Reverend Owens, are you still with us?
Yes.
Yes, he's with us. Okay. I want to say, just to echo what he said, this quite possibly could be the change. This quite possibly could be the platform. The charges, not as swift as everyone wanted, but yes, the upgrade was there. And as everyone echoed in this room, along with the Reverend, will others be accountable and held accountable? Okay, obviously we can't go backwards, but moving forward, is this the platform? I believe continuing in dialogue, Vinny, what you said, big fan of yours, Mayor, you're mentioning Busta Rhymes. Here with him here. YPP, one of the most dynamic videos I've seen. It really, if to see the lights with the thumb, it's probably me still clicking it. I've shown it to everyone. I think you need to do it all the time, especially that age group. Ladies, that's what we were saying, capturing that age group, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, as far as voting, politics, getting involved, City Hall. That's the grasp we need. Another thing you mentioned, and I read a lot about that as well, growing up in a diverse community. Now, like you said, white children are challenging their parents because they're not growing up in solely white neighborhoods. They're growing up in diverse neighborhoods. They're going to school. They're going to colleges. They're getting a different feel and a different look, and they have a different mindset. And they are challenging their parents. And so, right, that would be the catalyst for change. That would be to get everyone on board for what we're looking for.
Great, great, great. Councilwoman, where do we go from here?
I think as a city, as a people, right, I just say we continue to fight. I think ultimately for other folks who want to get involved, it's important that we support organizations who are doing this work, particularly those who are in the practice of like bailing folks out when they do peacefully protest, right? We have legal defense funds that we need to be also supporting and pushing. The NAACP has one. And ultimately as a city, I think it's just continuing accountability. I think it's also getting involved in other ways to make sure that people know who we are. Folks have been talking a lot about the census and what that means, yes, right? And we talk about talking about representation. A lot of times our communities are undercounted, right? And so when we have these diverse efforts towards getting police and representations on other places, they based it on the percentage that they got from the census. And if we're undercounted, right, then that's just one other reason for them to say, hey, these folks don't need that much representation, right, when it comes to our structural systems. And so I think that those are other small, minor ways that people can get involved, even if you feel locked in right now or you feel helpless or you don't know what to do. There's smaller things like the census that we can also be part of.
Thank you so much. Then where do we go from here?
I'm a huge advocate of education and infiltration. So the more educated and informed you are, the better chance you have of getting these positions, acquiring these positions. And I would say, you know, we just definitely bear hug our youth and, you know, put them on the proper path that, yes, it's going to be a long fight, but just know this. It's psychological warfare. These people know what they're doing, and it's good that we have a diverse group of people who are ready to go and protest. You have a bunch of people who are super angry, but then you need this group of people who understand exactly what it is. It's psychological warfare, and all they're doing is protecting generational wealth. You know, generational advantage. And I believe it's good that these young people are challenging their parents now, because if their parents are condoning this racism, now as a youth you're saying, well, you know what, you're telling me to cheat. And if anything, you're trying to tell me that these people are inferior. If you keep encouraging me to cheat when I feel that we should be on an even ground, you're saying to me that I'm inferior as a young white person. And the human spirit says, no, that's not the truth. If you're good, you're human. The human spirit, the human psyche is incredible. And all humans as a collective, you know, you're talented in every field possible. So white people shouldn't feel intimidated that any other race are able to compete and play on that same field. When you know, level the playing field, hey, people will find themselves. It's okay that if white people want to live in a white community, if black people want to live in a black community, if people want to live in a mixed community, but at least give the people a chance to decipher it for themselves. Don't just go out there and just try to sabotage people. So that's what it is, deliberate sabotage, stay the course, stay educated, and let's infiltrate.
Beautiful, that is beautiful. Organization is always the key. So Reverend Owens, again, the question was asked, we're having this conversation, folks are out protesting, folks are standing up for their rights, folks are gathering and having conversations, but where do we go from here?
Okay. After the protest, we have to have a plan. We have to have a plan. If not, we're just exerting our anger and our frustration with no follow-through, no follow-up. And so we got to have a plan. The plan I'm recommending is that we vote, but not just vote for voting's sake, but that we begin to define what our issues are, that we begin to hold those elected officials or those who are running for office, hold them accountable to how they will deal with police brutality, how they will deal with discrimination. So we're voting, be informed, understanding what the issues are. Being informed as to know how many judge appointments are available with this presidential election, because that will trickle down to us. So we got to vote and we got to be informed. And from a spiritual perspective, we have to keep the faith. I believe that God allows these things to happen for us to come together and work towards the common good for all people. It's disturbing to me because just 2 years ago, the president began to enact legislation that forcibly pushed brown people out of this country, back to their homeland. families were separated, and there were no protests. There were no pickets because it didn't affect us. But with the death of a George Floyd, we understand now it affects us. My belief is that we all come together and understand that we've got to fight for the rights of all people and hold our elected officials accountable. And if that does not work, if they don't work, if they don't follow through on what we're asking them to do, that's when our 2 young STEM students who are about to go to college, they become a part of this process, and they become the voices of change. And so, my brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you to keep the faith. God hasn't brought us this far to leave us, but we've got work to do.
Yes,
and it goes beyond the protest. The protest is just the beginning. We want to come up with a plan.
Right, and Reverend Owens, thank you for that. You know, I quite often when I have my meetings with our young people, our student council, and we have, you know, dialogue about what government is about, what their thoughts is, and I quite often tell our young people that they have to be a part of the process. If there's legislation in the city of East Orange that we are talking about, they need to have a conversation about that legislation because they have ideas just as well as we have ideas. And I think that is one of the things that I truly believe in, and that's why I bring the young people in City Hall, because I quite often tell people it's not my City Hall, it's our City Hall. You live in this community, you stay in this community, go to school in this community, it's your City Hall too. We only occupy. But what we want our young people very quickly, because we only got 3 more minutes, and I want to just close out. And less than, and I'm not rushing y'all, but just a little bit, less than 30 seconds, each of y'all. We're going to start with Anissa first. Where do we go from here? And Sage, you chime right in right after Anissa, then I'm going to close out.
And I think that we need to empower our meaning.
Come on.
I think that hello?
Yes, go ahead.
I think that we need to empower our Black businesses, meaning that we need to send our money to our people.
Okay.
Instead of spending money in outside businesses that don't care about us, that just want to take from us, that just want to profit off of us, why not we give our money to our people who can help with the front lines and help fund people who want to run for office, help fund our ideas and stuff like that. And also I think that we need to empower our teachers because I feel like the teachers in my school and just the teachers in general are the ones that are teaching us about our civics. Like my teacher, my 7th grade teacher, he taught me about civics.
Yes.
He taught me about the importance of having a Black mayor. He taught me the importance about having a Black president. So I think we need to empower our teachers and also empower our Black businesses.
Thank you so much, Anissa.
Which is why I will be, my first thing will be a Black man. The first thing that I will be a Black man.
All right. We like that. Sage, come on, you got 30 seconds.
I'll be swift, right? So like I said prior, personal knowledge, you have to know what you haven't had in the past, you have to know what you need, and you have to know what you can do to make it better tomorrow. And I think the greatest lesson that we have as a generation is our voice. And we could potentially be the greatest mayors, educators, presidents, and politicians of tomorrow. And what we have to do is we have to educate ourselves on what we need most right now so we can start making action. And right now my favorite quote is "Rioting is the language of the unheard." But as you said so eloquently and well, Mayor Green, you were right. Violence isn't necessary. We're capable of being heard peacefully. You know, we need to start and sign petitions. We need to attend our city council meetings. We need to hold peaceful protests. And we have an opportunity to bash these violent, threatening stereotypes to why riot, you know? We once had such a high status in the world, we're so capable of getting it back, and we can make a difference. You know, as a young person, I can say the majority of the greatest activists in the past were younger. Like, you look at who was in the Black Panther Party and the Montgomery, the bus boycott, and all these different movements, they were young people. And, you know, in the past couple of years, America has kept its knee on our necks forever, and that's where my feelings towards the cops getting charged as it did. I hope that this is a trailblazing process. And I'm positive that the few policemen out there that abuse the power given to them with their badge will finally begin to be brought to justice in the future. And it's to place a sense of fear, unfortunately, in these racist cops that in the future that may put themselves in this position. And that's what's important. And you know, Councilwoman Claybrook, you said it well too. Our leadership needs to look at like us, and at least in my city, I feel comfortable. Like I'm happy. I walk in the streets, and I'm comfortable. I love the city, and I walk into city hall meetings, and I see these beautiful black and brown people.
Yes,
from my city.
Yes.
So I feel like the circumstances are the same in other places, and I feel like the 2020, excuse me, this next couple of years, they'll be in the textbooks in the future of the American social reformation. I feel like we're so capable of making a big difference.
No, and definitely y'all are. And we're going to make sure as not only leaders in the community, but men and women, that we have to make sure that we support all of you. And I really mean that. It's not because we're talking this conversation tonight on Facebook and Instagram. We mean that. We have to make sure y'all know that we have y'all back, and we got y'all back. So with that, let me just say to the panel, I just want to thank everyone who joined the panel tonight in our discussion. That was peace, but not patience, right? And it gave us an opportunity here in the city of East Orange to just have some dialogue of injustice, right? Because, again, as I said, the last 11 to 12 weeks we have been inundated with this pandemic. And then immediately during this pandemic, because African Americans have been affected with this COVID-19. African Americans have been affected with injustice. African Americans have been assaulted by individual cops who thought they can get away with what they can get away with, right? So I thought that it would only be fitting that we have this conversation because things are happening. And we have folks excited and folks energized and folks a little angry, and we got to keep that in a positive way. I do believe that we have to make sure that we set policies, right? That's going to be so important that our young people be involved in the conversation along with everybody that's sitting here tonight. Policies, because we can march all we want, but we have to get policies done, legislation done to make sure that there's laws in place that folks have to abide by. So I'm so grateful to our Chief Bendy, our Councilwoman, Brittany Claybrook from the 2nd Ward, from Vinnie Brown from Naughty by Nature, who joined us tonight, and to our Reverend Dana P. Owens from Messiah Baptist Church, and also to Sage, thank you so much. Anissa, thank you so much. To everybody that has been watching this evening, we thank you. But again, as I always say, and I will continue to say it, we are one city. We are one community. We have one goal. That goal is progress. We have a lot of work to do, but I can tell you this, that I am very proud of our community. But again, we have to make sure that we embrace our young people and make sure that we help them and guide them to, because one day they're going to be leading this city. They're going to be leading this county. They're going to be leading this country. So we have to make sure we embrace them. I do just want to say very quickly to make sure that you please fill out or complete the census. Census 2020 is so important. We have to be counted because just as well we're talking about different things, what's happening in terms of justice and this COVID-19. These are funds that can be funded into our community to not only help with education, not only help with recreation, not only help with our roads and health benefits. It's many things that during the census we have to be counted, so I'm going to ask all of you to be counted. Again, thank you for tuning in tonight. This is well needed, but again, I still ask, where do we go from here? And hopefully we can have many more conversations around not only improving our community, but also improving the laws around us to make our city even better than what it is today. So again, thank everybody for joining us. May God bless you. May God bless your family.